Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show, a nightly event that should never be missed. And for once, lately, we're on our regular shopping time, which is 7:30. Joe Rayo on the left, and I'm Joe Chaffee. The Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. 631-756-1125 is the phone number for the best prices in town for anything you need, from hardware to generators to backyard stuff. So give them a call or go to the website, which is omnitruevalue.com. And then, of course, there is wholesale holiday lighting by Giannini at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, New York, just almost down the block from where Omni is. You can make two stops at once. Your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs, whether you want to get your home decorated or maybe you want to do this as a business or expand your landscaping business. Give them a call. They're at 631-957-5106, and the website is liholidaylighting.com. And they're both local businesses, folks, and we know how important it is these days to support your local businesses. So here's
Absolutely.
yes. So here's what I'm thinking for tomorrow. So you got this pseudo warm front that's pushing up. And I'm thinking there probably are going to be some downpours and maybe a thunderstorm ahead of it late tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. And I'm just looking at the way things are setting up. Sometimes in a situation like this, you can get one thunderstorm that decides to just pour its heart out. And given the fact that we had all that rain over the weekend, the drying that we had Monday, Tuesday, and today, quote unquote, I mean, we didn't exactly have a ton of sun, so I'm sure the ground is still fairly saturated. That if somebody gets a downpour that puts down a quick inch of rain someplace, it might cause a little bit of localized flooding. So that was the first thought that came to mind. I'm curious as to what your thoughts on that are.
Well, I'm, of course, following along with the folks over at SPC, the Storm Prediction Center, and they have an area of slight risk tomorrow just to the west of the New York City metropolitan area. And in fact, Joe, not only do they have a slight risk, but within that slight risk zone, they're talking about a 2% chance, which is typical for this type of a setup, 2% chance of tornadic activity, more of a damaging wind possibility with 15% there, and even a chance for a little bit of the icy stuff, a little bit of hail that might come down in any given severe cell that does pop up. And we're talking about now, do you agree that we're talking about basically for the middle and latter part of tomorrow afternoon or maybe early tomorrow evening? You would not expect to see this, I think, first thing in the morning tomorrow or during the early part of the day tomorrow. I think this is going to be based upon, in part, diurnal heating up the atmosphere, getting it more and more unstable, and then setting the stage or setting the plates on the table for the possibility of some strong to severe activity later tomorrow and tomorrow evening.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting day tomorrow. That's not a shabby shortwave that's coming through. I mean, we've seen stronger ones, but this one's kind of holding its own as it moves eastward. And the front's going to have one of the big questions. I think push the slight risk up further north because I think they looked at everything today and said, you know what, maybe the daytime heating will be a little more effective and a little further north. I just have two, one issue is that in a situation like this, sometimes when you get that first batch that moves through with a warm front that comes up in the morning, it can stabilize the atmosphere to a certain extent. So you better get at least some daytime heating during the latter part of the day in order to help support some stronger storms. I mean, I would be watching that in case it winds up. Sometimes you get these things, they try to move through, they get hung up, you get that shot of rain in the morning, but then you wind up sitting in clouds for the whole day and you don't get the daytime heating that you would like to see. So I would just kind of keep an eye on that. And the south wind, that's going to be an issue. for southern New England and Long Island in that it'll stabilize the atmosphere some. On the other hand, you do have that short wave that's going to be approaching, and that's going to lend some support. So sometimes you can get that to sort of compensate somewhat for the south wind. But I think SPC though has the right idea of cutting off the risk area right along the immediate coast. I mean, they literally drew the line down the Garden State Parkway on their map in New Jersey. And that makes sense. And I did notice, too, that at least from the standpoint of the digital forecast for the Hudson Valley, that they upped their temperatures for tomorrow. And before, they were just keeping everybody in the 60s from the Hudson Valley, New York City, east. Now they've nudged up the Hudson Valley into the 70s and kind of nudged that risk area up a little bit there and pushed the temperatures up to the east by several degrees from what they saw earlier. So maybe the Weather Service and SPC are sort of looking at this and says, well, maybe the warm front gets a little further north and you get the wind to go more south-southwest, and that cuts off the ocean to a certain extent. So a few things to watch tomorrow, I think, with respect to those downpours and the severe weather.
The excuse me, the RPM, or as many people know it from watching television, the Futurecast. I'm looking at the 18Z RPM, and they have like clusters, if you will, of potential strong to severe activity hitting the Hudson Valley, northern New Jersey, even portions of the New York City metropolitan area during the middle to latter part of the afternoon into tomorrow evening. So again, that's probably going to be the time frame that you'll have to watch for the possibility of getting a bit wet. And also, again, maybe, just maybe, we might be looking at a little bit of strong wind activity, maybe a touch of hail. Again, that shortwave certainly is going to be conducive to producing that. The southerly wind, on the other hand, may very well cut it off as the system begins to move into the New York City area and begins to work its way east across Long Island and Connecticut. The southerly winds serving almost like a wall, if you will. Once the activity hits that, it immediately kind of dies out or dries out. So it'll be an interesting day to watch tomorrow overall. And I think it actually today was rather comfortable, Joe, from even though it was not exactly the dry, pleasant air that you like to see in the month of June. It still is comfortable, especially when you consider what probably is heading our way as we move into the weekend and especially through a good part of next week.
Yeah, tomorrow, and I completely forgot about this, but a year ago tomorrow, we had that derecho that went through eastern PA and New Jersey. I got to go back and refresh my memory on that.
I remember that well. That was somewhat unexpected, wasn't it? It's like, where the heck did that come from?
I would like to think that we were talking about it the night before. I don't remember. Honestly.
Well, we probably no. But what I'm saying is that yes, you're right. We probably were talking about convection and the possibility of showers and scattered thunderstorms. But a derecho is a whole different animal of its own right, and that thing was really an animal when it came on through Philadelphia area, Camden, and then on into Ocean County. That really was a rough go. And tornadoes, yeah, it was that from that standpoint, I think unexpected. We were expecting something in terms of convection, but we weren't expecting anything like that.
Yeah. Michael Azara, thank you for reminding me about the derecho. And two questions. Matt K asks me, he says he's confused about how there's a threat of severe weather when A, it's supposed to be cloudy most of the day and no sun, and B, maybe the rain earlier in the day, which stabilizes the atmosphere, which we've already explained. I would just throw in the fact that, those are factors you're certainly going to have to watch because they will determine, they will be part of the equation here as far as what develops tomorrow. One of the things that lends to the idea of severe weather is the fact that you do have a semi-healthy shortwave trough that's coming in and impacting this whole thing with the cold front approaching. But also, the dew points are going to get juiced up tomorrow. So we're going to see dew points getting into the 60s. And even though you're only talking about daytime highs, you're pushing daytime highs into the upper 70s to around 80. You don't have to go to 90 to get a thunderstorm out to develop, or a severe thunderstorm. It's more about the upper air dynamics, and I think you do have some of that going on. So that kind of compensates. It's just one of these days where if you put up check boxes, you've got a bunch of boxes checked on one side that said yes, there will be severe weather, and a bunch of boxes on the other side that say no, there won't be severe weather. It's probably leaning a little bit more on the severe side versus the not severe side. So that's kind of the way I usually try to approach these things. And for you, Mr. Rayo, Bill Rogers would like you, because you are such a great explainer. He doesn't see, apparently, where Bill Rogers is, hail is a generational event, once every 10 years or so. So he would like to know what causes it.
Well, I mean, you don't necessarily get hail with every severe thunderstorm, and one thing that you need to have hail are cold cloud tops. And down in the southeastern part of the country, sometimes that's absent, or sometimes a situation where, as any frozen precipitation is falling from, let's say, the upper levels of the atmosphere on down, it'll melt before reaching the ground. So. And where does Bill live, by the way?
In Vermont, in southern Vermont, I believe.
In Vermont, and he's wondering. Oh, but he has seen hail.
He says he sees hail
it's
once.
It's not really a generational.
Well, no, he says he's only seen it once every 10 years or so.
One every 10 years? I don't understand that. I mean, down here we get several hailstorms each year down
well, maybe
here in the
hail is illegal.
Tri-state area.
Maybe hail is illegal in Vermont.
Well, they certainly got their.
I know we've talked about we've talked about the state of Vermont a few times, but he says once every 10 years.
Well, I think maybe Bill has simply not been outside when the hail is actually, because up there, I'm sure they get their fair share of what we call hailers, or during the springtime, these little, pea-sized hailstorms. And admittedly, you're not going to see in Vermont, you're not going to see the 2 and 3 inch size hail that they get out in the nation's midsection. But the hailstorms generally occur with cold cloud tops, and what I'm saying is that sometimes you get those down in the southeastern states, Florida, even you're down where you are in Georgia, Joe, and sometimes the hail just melts before it gets down to the ground. The hailstones get tossed around a bit in the upper part of the atmosphere, but maybe not so much to grow large enough to of a certain size to maintain their identity when they come all the way down or make their way all the way down to the surface level, and so they just kind of evaporate or dry up. Sometimes you see this on the Storm Prediction Center page, and you look for the parameters, in terms of possible tornado activity, wind activity, and hail activity. And a lot of times when you look down over the Southland, the southern United States, where severe weather is occurring, you'll see the damaging winds, you'll see the threat of thunderstorm, but for the probability of hail, it's zero, because they don't think that it's going to be much in terms of hail activity or severe hail activity. I guess they would consider a severe hail event something on the order of 1 inch or more, which, in the summertime down in the south, you just don't expect to see.
I think the way they define, I think it's 2 inches or more in diameter.
Well, sometimes I've seen them talk about 1 inch hail, but
but when they do the storm report counts, I think they have it as 2 inch is the line in the sand that they draw. Craig Carlberg says where he is, it's 80 and mostly cloudy in the neighboring state of South Carolina. It's been a mostly overcast day here today. The sun every once in a while would poke its head through, and then as soon as it did that, clouds would reform, because I'm up here in God's country in the mountains. But a cloudy day. It was reasonably cool, which is nice. I don't think it got much above 70 or low 70s. It started out this morning at about 62 when I got up. but the temperature really didn't rise very much. We had a few drops of rain, but nothing really substantial. All right, so let's take a look at let's start off with tonight's satellite view. And we've been dealing with this now for 2 days, where we've had these high clouds rolling in, all blowing off from this upper trough that's swinging out from the plains and across the middle Mississippi Valley. You can see the sort of very broad rotation of the clouds rolling from north to south through the plains, and then they turn southwest from Texas, from central and east Texas, northeastward. So there's getting all this blow off, and that plus the south wind really kind of held temperatures in check today across much of the northeast and the northern mid-Atlantic states, and a lot of clouds from Maine all the way down to Florida in a lot of cloud cover this evening. And we're seeing some thunderstorms blow up to the west, and we've got the tornado HQ. I'm just going to switch over. I like to use their all severe warnings view. There are 4 working severe thunderstorm warnings at the moment, and 2 of them are in Texas. 1 is in Mississippi, and there's a special marine warning at the moment for Lake Pontchartrain in New Orleans. It's 7:46 Eastern Time on the 2nd of June. So if you're watching this on a replay, remember to check the National Weather Service, your local National Weather Service forecast office, for what's the latest and what's going on with respect to any severe weather. And you can do that by going to weather.gov and then clicking your geography on the map to bring up the local office. But there's a line of actually, hasn't moved very much. There's been precip into northwest Georgia all day. Now we've got what looks like somewhat of a line of showers with a few embedded thunderstorms that runs from about New Orleans northeastward to just west of Birmingham to about Knoxville in the south. And then there's more activity clustered in parts of Texas between Fort Worth, Abilene, and Point South. Seeing some shower and thunderstorm activity there. Also in West Texas, south and west of Lubbock, in the southwest corner of Texas, and a snaking little band of showers and embedded thunderstorms in eastern New Mexico between Albuquerque and Amarillo. A few clusters of storms in Oklahoma, near and southwest of Tulsa. And here in the mid-Atlantic and northeast, starting to see some showers bubbling up in southeastern Virginia. Some showers just to your north, Joe, in the middle and upper Hudson Valley, up to about Albany and east of Syracuse and into western Mass. And we're seeing some rain with a few embedded heavier showers this evening in parts of northern Ohio and into western Pennsylvania. Starting to see the beginnings of the activity that's in the south and western Maryland and down in southeastern Virginia. That's part of this warm front that's going to, or pseudo-warm front that's going to start to push northward, and we're going to see a band of showers that'll develop overnight and head on up to the northeast.
Yeah, and the weather picture for tomorrow for us locally, Joe, I think partially is going to hinge on where the warm front is. Now, the various guidance models are telling us that the warm front is going to work its way through here during the late morning and early afternoon. Sometimes, however, these warm fronts, as you are well aware, get hung up and don't fully move on through. You want to get that warm front north of here if you want to see severe weather tomorrow, all 6 of you. If you really want to see that type of weather, you're going to have to get that warm front through first. And then that'll put us in the juicy air, so to speak. And then the cold front working its way in from the west with the associated upper trough could light the fuse, so to speak, for possible severe weather here later tomorrow. And again, the key is where that warm front is, which marks the leading edge of the, much warmer and more humid, sticky conditions. And like I said, sometimes you get these fronts. They sometimes loop, if you will. You'll get the warm air surging up into, let's say central New York, Binghamton and on through into Syracuse. And meantime, the front kind of loops back and down and hasn't even reached through New York City and Long Island yet. And we're still waiting to get into that humid air. And the the folks of the west are much more humid and also noticeably warmer as well. So that's the thing that we'll be looking at tomorrow, or watching carefully tomorrow, in terms of whether or not we do indeed see some strong to possibly severe activity, which may very well be hitting us. If, again, some of the models are correct, we may be seeing some of that, maybe right around the time that we'll be on the air tomorrow night, which will be 8:30 tomorrow night.
Yep, we'll cover it live. SPC for tonight, marginal risk across Mississippi, northwest Alabama, western and central Tennessee, central and western Kentucky, southern Indiana, a small portion of southern Illinois, and southeast Missouri. We've got marginal risk across much of Texas, and a slight risk being indicated in the yellow, or more toward the southwestern part of the state. Now, here is the area for tomorrow, Thursday, and SPC overnight reduced the area of slight risk, only to have the afternoon forecaster go in the other direction, and he expanded it back northeastward to include much of northern New Jersey and the western counties up and down the state. And I guess, almost eyeballing it, you could say it's pretty much everywhere north and west of the Turnpike, to just about to you, Joe, to the Catskills, eastern and northeastern Pennsylvania, southeast, south central PA, Maryland, Delaware, into Virginia. Of course, you see the marginal risk that's enveloped around it. They really didn't change that very much. And I mentioned earlier about how the line in New Jersey runs up and down the Garden State Parkway, and it looks like they left that alone. I think tomorrow in the morning, when they update this again, it's going to really be based on where they think the warm front gets, and how effective they think the daytime heating is going to be. Trying to forecast a warm frontal position in the springtime, it sometimes can be an absolute exercise in futility.
Absolutely.
More often than not, they get hung up, and the marine era is just too important. On the other hand, every once in a while, they do tend to blow through and go further north. So again, those are, as we said before, there's a number of keys here with regards to how the severe weather plays tomorrow, and that's probably the most important one. If you could get that out of the way, and if we break out into sunshine, or at least some sunshine, mid to late morning and through the afternoon, where the daytime temperatures that are forecast to say be in the mid to upper 70s in the warm sector, wind up busting by being a few degrees too low, then that puts another checkbox into the idea that the thunderstorms will wind up being on the strong side. And here you can see the categorical risk for wind, as you said, 15% in the slight risks, 5% in the marginal, 5% risk for hail. And that's by 5%. When we brought these percentages, remember, it's the probability of 1-inch diameter hail within 25 miles of any point. And if it's a hatched area, which it's not, that's a 10% or greater probability of 2-inch diameter hail or larger within 25 miles of any point inside the risk zone. And there's, Joe mentioned earlier, that 2% area risk for a tornado. The next day, for Friday, day 3, we're looking for general thunderstorms in the east, but no risk. Risk area shifts well to the west in Montana and northwestern North Dakota. And just for laughs, I'll just put the day 4 through 8, just to see what they have. Predictability too low on day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, and day 8. I will just say, by the time we get to the latter part of that forecast period, there's not going to be a whole lot of anything going on as far as thunderstorms are concerned in the eastern part of the U.S. from what I can see. Particularly the northeastern Mid-Atlantic.
I have a question now. Do you think that with, not necessarily, I've been saying that the front would have to come through, put us in the juicy air, and then we'd wait for the cold front or the upper disturbance from the west to move in and set the stage for thunderstorms, severe thunderstorms later tomorrow into tomorrow evening. Do you think that with the warm front pressing in our direction from the south and west, that we might see convection here with that approaching warm front, either very late tonight or during the early part of the day to kick off the day tomorrow?
I think you can. I think you can, and I think it's could be one of those things where with the warm front, every so often you get a little cluster of heavy downpours with lightning and thunder. Nothing necessarily severe, but the rain would be the bigger deal, and that's why I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show that possibly ahead of the warm front, because the ground has to be somewhat still somewhat saturated from the weekend rains. Uh, we weren't bright and sunny the last couple of days. If that winds up happening and you get into a downpour that produces a quick 3/4 of an inch or an inch and a quarter, there might be some localized flooding. I think there's a possibility that you could see that with the warm front going by tomorrow morning. Morning
Okay,
thunderstorms
so
morning thunderstorms when you wake up first thing. I always kind of enjoyed them, even though at some level you're a little mad because they may have woken you up out of a sound sleep. But there's something about a thunderstorm in the morning hours I've always found interesting.
I've always felt that having a thunderstorm in the morning is, as you just said, interesting. But I've only once in my life have I ever seen a rainbow with a thunderstorm in the morning. I remember when I was working at that private weather service that you and I recall back in the 80s. We had a whale of a thunderstorm, but it was associated with a passing cold front, moved right on through, and you're so accustomed to see of course, the rainbow is opposite to the sun in the sky, but you're so often accustomed to seeing the rainbow, arching in the east in the afternoon and early evening. But this rainbow, of course, was in the west, and that was kind of a strange sight to see. Normally, you don't see that, of course, because thunderstorms again usually pop up in the afternoon, and you usually see rainbows in the afternoon. I think it's kind of unusual or rare to see one in the morning, but it was so well defined, and but yeah, to be awakened out of a sound sleep, let's say, have a thunderstorm hit, let's say at 7 or 7:30 in the morning, like what the heck is that? And so maybe tomorrow morning, if one of you out there watching may get one, think about us because we were discussing it tonight.
Right. Bill Rogers asking the concept of weather service, what they mean by precipitable water. So, uh, basically, what that is it's how deep the water is in a column of the atmosphere, the potential. So, in other words, if all the water that's in that column were precipitated as rain, okay, if all that water condensed and you wound up seeing it fall, all of it as rain, it basically gives you the potential of how much rain you could squeeze out of the atmosphere. I think that's probably the easiest way to look at it. So, if the precipitable,
Right.
it doesn't mean that you're going to get, if the precipitable water in the atmosphere is 5 inches, it doesn't mean that you're going to get 5 inches of rain. It would, but if it, in terms of all the moisture that's in the air, if you were to squeeze it out, that's how much moisture there is. I think that pretty well sums it up.
Yes, I think that does sum it up pretty good.
And by the way,
How about if we?
if you're interested, just Google it, precipitable water, and it'll have some charts there, and you can see quite well what it means and what it implies. Plain and simple.
And did you do the WPC QPF map
No,
yet for the upcoming week?
Even as we speak, Joe, I just put it up on the screen for you.
See, we're thinking about it.
Yes. This is all. I'll just give it a quick refresh because they update this map sometimes, like many times during the day. They just did apparently at 21:30 Z, so just about a couple of hours ago. So they're generating. Looks like about 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a quarter. There's an area of purple just offshore, assuming that that's right. But what if it's not right? What if that winds up being on land? You see, that's an inch and a half plus. and also those heavy rains that extend down into southeastern Virginia, eastern North Carolina, and down into Florida, also anywhere from about an inch to an inch and a half, 2 inches over the next 7 days. Now, what you're seeing in the Northeast, this is pretty much in the forecast period, which takes us through next Wednesday night. 99% of this is going to be from Thursday into Friday. And then if you look down in Texas, this is, again, continuing with that southwest flow and all that tropical air that's getting in there, several to many inches for central and east Texas into much of southern Louisiana. So we're looking pretty wet here from that standpoint. So moving along, we're going to go to the GFS. I look. This is the old GFS run, and I'll put up the new one in a moment. But since I already have the upper air on this, and of course, we've been seeing the weather behave itself the last couple of days, but it hasn't been picture perfect. And here's that trough in the Midwest, in the middle of the country. The northern part is moving toward the western lakes, and then you have a little separation, and then there's a southern shortwave there from Missouri down into Texas. Now, remember, if I go back to the beginning of this, remember from what happened late last week was that the bottom part of the trough that was swinging in the eastern part of the United States separated and formed a cutoff low, and it lagged behind, and this caused our big problems that we had for the Memorial Day holiday weekend. This time around, the northern part of the jet stream this time around is not going to completely separate from the south. There's enough of the northern part of the jet stream there to carry this southern shortwave along. It's sort of dragging it along rather than, swinging it quickly through the east. So it lags a little bit into Friday, but ultimately it does get kicked away to the northeast. That allows a very strong ridge to build in the eastern part of the United States for the weekend and for the first part of next week. Now, beyond that, if you look at the flow, so we're into Wednesday morning here. Let me just fix this here. Your upper flow is like this, running from off the coast of California, then goes northeastward to Montana, and then straight east across southern Canada. So all the areas that are to the south of this are going to be very warm to hot. And in our instance, I think we're going to wind up also being rather humid, starting maybe on Sunday, but really getting into the humidity Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday in the next week. How long this lasts? Well, the last run of this run of the GFS started to flex the muscle of the northern jet next Wednesday and tries to push a shallow cold front through here Wednesday night, and sags it to our south for next Thursday. And whether that leads to complications or not, I don't know. Eventually, the ridge tries to rebuild, but this time, later in the month, it rebuilds more in the middle part of the country. So that puts us in line for a flow from the northwest, which means that basically it means that whatever, this heat, this very warm, it's a hot pattern that we're getting into, is going to last about 4 days, 5 days, and then it's going to break. If the models are correct in trying to backdoor it later next week, but I'm not 100% sold on that notion at the moment at this time. Are you with us, Mr. Rayo, or did I lose you?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you froze.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry. We must have took a brief signal hit there.
It was like Mr. Freeze.
Yes.
Okay. Dun, 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 dun.
Yes. Da-da. Played by 3 different actors, by the way.
Right.
Eli Wallach, right? Otto Preminger, and there was a third one. I want to say George Saunders played Mr. Freeze, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
I once spoke on the phone to Eli Wallach's wife, Ann Jackson.
Ann Jackson, yes.
She was a very well-known actress in her own right, but once she was calling the Hayden Planetarium, and she didn't apparently want anybody to know that she was Ann Jackson. Instead, she said, He said, "Hello, this is Mrs. Eli Wallach." He stressed that, and I'm just wondering what is that object in the western sky? And it was the planet Venus, but it always blew me away that, she said, "This is Mrs. Eli Wallach," as opposed to saying, "This is Ann Jackson." I would have known either one, but I guess same thing. I've read somewhere where Jack Benny's wife, Mary Livingston, whenever she went to buy something at a dress store, she would always call herself, "I'm Mrs. Jack Benny."
Huh.
Bring out your best stuff.
But she was Mrs. Jack Benny.
She was Mrs. Jack Benny, but she was also well known as Mary Livingston. But I guess she figured that if she said Mrs. Jack Benny, it would have more pull, and she would get treated in a more royal fashion. And maybe that's why Ann Jackson figured she'd get the answer about the bright light in the western sky if she said, "I'm Mrs. Eli Wallach," instead of Mrs.
Well, Ann Jackson.
I wanted to ask her.
Ann Jackson's not only an Oscar winner, but she also is a very, I don't know if she's still a member, an MP, a member of the House of Commons, but she was.
Well, the question is she still alive?
Yeah,
I know Eli Wallach died.
I think she's still alive. I don't know if she's still an MP. I don't think she's an MP anymore.
Okay.
But she was very big in politics. She stopped acting and went into politics in Britain. All right, we've got the 18Z map, so let's see if we've got the same idea for later next week. We're already trying to end the heat, and it hasn't even gotten here yet. So, of course, we play through tomorrow. Here comes your big ridge that builds into the eastern part of the United States. We're into Wednesday. And, Joe, the northern jet on the 18Z run doesn't come as far south. We'll look at it on the surface, but at least in terms of what's happening aloft. And then after that, trough drops down in the west. The ridge tries to rebuild in the east. It doesn't build in the middle of the country. And eventually, though, that northern jet, the model still says that northern jet becomes more dominant, even dropping a cutoff low. My God, what is that? There's like a multi-contour deep cutoff low that drops into Kentucky by late in the forecast period. Now, obviously, it's not. We know it's not going to look like this, but it's just kind of interesting that it still has this very active, high amplitude type pattern going into mid-June. The atmosphere usually calms down, but it still seems to want to be very busy going into mid-month.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. And of course, for those of you who want to see the eclipse of the sun a week from tomorrow morning, everything is going to be hinging on where that supposed backdoor front is going to be. Will it push on in? The last thing you would want to see is it to make it all the way down to, let's say, New York, Long Island, southern New England, and just sit there with clouds and showers. Meanwhile, places to the north of that front would be in much better shape to have clear skies. Or will it just stay up to the north and we just stay in a warm, sultry air mass? These will be resolved. These questions will be resolved, I'm sure, in the days to come. But
take a look. I just
more than 7 days out, you really don't know.
Right, but I did just put up the 18Z map, and guess what? I drew the front. I drew the front, Joe. You should be able to see it on the screen now. But I drew the front. Look where it is. Did you faint? Yeah. Did you faint?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
But you know what? Sometimes these pressure systems, these high pressure systems from Canada, have just maybe a little bit more in the way of cooler air associated with them, a little drier air and a little heavier air. And maybe, just maybe, if this is going to happen, if this is what it's showing now, maybe it'll push it farther to the south. Although I've been rooting, Joe, for the last few days, I've been rooting for it to stay north of us and keep us in a sultry air pattern. And this way, you get that smazy, hazy sky on Thursday morning for the sunrise.
Well, I just pulled up the European surface. Now, this is where the GFS on this run is a good 12 hours slower and further north with the front, which I kind of expected when I saw the 12Z run. If I draw the backdoor front on the European, I would probably put it like this, which in fact, it's not really much of it. It's already stalled out across central New York and north of I-90. So this one, I think, is what you would like because you get that hazy kind of sunrise that you
Yeah,
want to
but
see.
also you want to just keep the building, cumulus clouds north of us.
Yeah.
uh, Sorry about that, Tim Beltman and folks who live up, or Bill Roger, people who live up to the north, closer to that frontal line. But again, we're a week away. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, I think, Joe, one thing that we both can agree on is that it's going to turn noticeably more humid, more sultry, if you will, with warm to hot conditions beginning later on in the weekend and carrying over through at least the first 2 or 3 days of next week.
Yeah.
And for all of you out there who were upset about the way Memorial Day was and about the temperatures only near about 50, and some of you like me, we didn't even get out of the 40s Saturday and Sunday, and you're moaning and complaining and saying, I want it warm. Well, as I said a couple of days ago, be careful what you wish for because you may get more than what you wish for by Sunday and into the early part of next week.
Eben Waterman says, what's up with the cold water off California that's blowing all our weather around there and up through Mexico, Texas, and the East Coast up here? Well, it's funny you mentioned the warm water because last night we were looking at the water temperatures and that kind of stood out was the very cold ocean water that's from Baja California west and then northwest up the Pacific coast, uh, several degrees below normal. I mean, I think I'm not 100% sure why that is. We have been seeing deep troughs out in the west, and the latest one is fairly deep and pretty far to the south. So it's allowing a subtropical jet to come across from the Pacific Ocean through central and northern Mexico and bringing the rains on up into Texas and into parts of Louisiana, and that looks to hold at least for a little while longer, which is why WPC continues to go hog wild with heavy rains. And by the way, this has been going on already for a number of days, so we're talking about an additional 3 to 5 inches or more of rain on top of tons of rain that has already fallen down there. So it can't be a pretty thing. Meanwhile, on the GFS, you can see that little cluster there that forms in eastern Virginia. We saw that in the radar. It carries it northeastward into New Jersey and southern New England tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And then it goes out pretty quick. And I'm just kind of looking here, just guessing off the isobars, Joe. The warm front, if you want to believe the GFS, is probably cutting right across Long Island at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and just north of you. So that would support what the GFS does, which is kind of a broken line of thunderstorms at 8 o'clock in the evening, running from southern New York down through the Carolinas and to off the Georgia coast. And then that goes out. Now, because the upper trough is lagging, there's the chance that we could see some showers or maybe an isolated thunderstorm or two on Friday. I don't think it would be anything severe. And once that goes away, we'll see that warm west wind take over. There's no cool air behind this weather front. So the high is already, you've got the high off the mid-Atlantic coast. And you see the edge of it. It's actually just east of Bermuda. And the cold front just kind of just falls apart as it runs into that big ridge that's out in the Atlantic. And then the ridge starts to build up the east coast. So you've got west winds on Saturday, west winds on Sunday. I think Sunday, if there's enough sun, and I don't see why there shouldn't be, we could see our first 90-degree highs in a lot of places. I mean, some places have already seen their first highs, but I think you're going to see many more seeing their first 90-degree highs on Sunday. Saturday, I think it'll be you might make it, I don't know, low to mid 80s, maybe a little bit higher than that. And then Monday and Tuesday, same thing until we can get a weather front to come down to cut this off. The high, it's all high pressure and west or west southwest isobars through Tuesday. Still no precip. A little bit in northern Virginia Tuesday night. And then on Wednesday, you start to see some scattered storms with this approaching backdoor front. And here it is. If I drew it, it's kind of like this. Now on the old run, Joe, the old run had the front already just about to New York City by Wednesday evening. So that's already further north. It doesn't come through until Thursday morning, where it has it stalling out right over from Cape Cod to Long Island, across, cuts New Jersey in half, and then back down into northern West Virginia with some scattered showers around. And then right after that, later Thursday afternoon, it sinks further south and the height of the north builds in. I don't know if that's correct in terms of the timing. The European would suggest that the front would take probably a good 12 hours longer to move through. And maybe it doesn't come through here until late Thursday afternoon or evening, which is what the overnight GFS run did. So, we're seeing all this stuff just bouncing around from run to run.
It's typical that the GFS is always seemingly more robust than the slower and dare I say wiser European. Well, that's the way it looks like it's panning out for the next 24 to 48 hours. And Bill Rogers has been talking about this rogue storm that he says is approaching Texas. And all I could say, Bill, is that if you're concerned about, a surprise tropical cyclone or some kind of a subtropical system, the National Hurricane Center for the next 48 hours has nothing, zilch. So I guess they're not really all that concerned about that system, that rogue system that you're alluding to, approaching Texas.
Okay. He's getting ready to go deer hunting. He's got a new hip. With his new hip, he'll be able to slaughter more deer. I love deer meat, by the way. I love deer sausage.
Venison.
And deer.
Yeah.
Joe, I've had the last time I was up in New Hampshire, I bought a couple of pounds of deer hot dogs. They were the best hot dogs I think I've ever had. They were so good. Really flavorful and very low in fat, by the way. Very low in fat. Relatively low in fat.
Renata hates the deer only from the standpoint that, they eat all of her plants, the hofsta.
Mm-hmm.
One time we actually had a deer come right up to the front door. When we lived in Long Island, we had a garden. She had a garden. She'd plant everything, kohlrabi and tomatoes and you can't do that here, because if you do that here, I mean, the critters that we have will just go after them. So now she's got all of our tomato plants for the last few years have been in huge pots right up near the front door. And I remember one year that I looked out at the front door window and I said, "Oh my God, there's a deer like 3 feet from my front door,
right.
Sampling the tomatoes or whatever." So they're not very welcome. And I reminded my wife that back in 1985 BC, before children, when we took our first real vacation after we were married, we went to Arizona. We went to the Grand Canyon, and up in the village, you see especially in the evening, the deer roaming around. We said, "Oh, look, there's deer. There's deer. You see that? Oh, with the white tail and everything." And we were so excited, that we saw that. And now I could see like 6 of them on my front lawn and say, open the door, "Get the heck out." And the first year we were here in 2002, we never saw it again. And I think I looked it up somewhere that there's only 1 in 30,000 are like this. We saw an albino deer, a white deer.
That's rare.
And it just wow, look at that. And we saw it once, never saw it again. So
that is rare. All right, let's do a little Briller Jeopardy. And tonight's category is June records for you. Okay, you ready?
Who's June records?
No, June records. June weather records.
Oh.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Since 1869, what was the highest temperature ever recorded in New York City Central Park in the month of June?
I think we got at least to 100 once. I'll say 101.
And 101 is the correct answer. Now, for a special gift certificate from the famous Spiegel Catalog Company, Spiegel, Chicago, Illinois, 60609.
Name the date.
Can you name the years that occurred? Because it occurred twice.
The year it occurred.
Right. Now, there are two when I tell, if you don't guess it right, but when I tell you, you're going to say, of course. because the years are standout years for 100-degree occurrences.
I'm going to say 1999.
Okay, 1999. If you invert the two nines in 99, you would have gotten
66.
66. And
66.
And the other year.
The other year.
Yeah. Tex Antoine used to love having records.
The Dirty 30s.
The Dirty 30s.
The 30s, yes. About 19. Let's say 1936. 34.
Yeah. 34 was.
I see. That's interesting.
34 was a very hot year.
Well, 34 was also the year of the coldest temperature ever in Central Park, 15 below zero. But 36 was the year of the hottest temperature ever at Central Park, which was 106.
Yeah.
That's why I said 36.
And I think 34.
Either way, they're dirty.
I think that 34 was I'm pretty sure it's still. I don't know if it's still the record. I don't think it might. Maybe it was broken, but it was the highest low temperature of 84. In other words, you woke up in the morning and it was 84, and that record held for a long time. But I think there was one morning in sometime in the last 30 years where the low I don't know why it sticks in my mind, but the low of 86 kind of sticks into my head. What was the coldest?
I can remember one year. One year we had up here, and it must have been. We've been up here 19 years, so it was in the last 19 years. But I mean, wake up in the morning, try to look out the window, couldn't look out the window. It was so foggy or so steamy, so humid. The whole window was fogged over.
I know, and
that was not good. That was not a good news.
That's disgusting. Yeah. What was the coldest temperature ever recorded in June?
Well, actually, I think actually there have been cases where in June at Central Park now.
Yeah.
I think we've actually seen a few days that dropped into the 40s. So I'll take a stab and say 47.
44 in 45.
Wow.
44 in 1945.
That's never going to happen again, I can assure you, boys and girls. Right. You will not see a 44 in your lifetime at Central Park.
Well, never say never. Okay, never say never.
That's true. Look what happened this past weekend.
Look what just happened. What was the coldest time? What was the coldest daytime high? So the lowest high in the month of June.
All right. Well, considering that we broke the record twice this past weekend at the very end of May, and those records were like 59, I think, 58, 59. I'll say the coldest high temperature in June was probably somewhere around that same area. Like I'll say 58.
52 is the coldest daytime high in 1944 and 1945.
Wow.
Okay.
Amazing.
Now here's your bonus.
The hair never had a chance.
Here's your bonus question. What is the Central Park? Actually, there are two bonus questions. What is Central Park's record for the most consecutive days with a high of 95 or higher?
Oh God. Oh. Well, I know that Central Park has had on a couple of occasions. One of them was in 1993, where we strung together 3 100-degree temperatures. So I'm just going to double that for 95 or above. I'll say 6.
The answer is 8, and that
8
that occurred in 1944. And what's the longest possible time for a total eclipse of the sun?
7 minutes and 31 seconds.
Okay, he has 7 minutes and 32 seconds, but I'm not going to quibble over a second.
Second. Mrs. Isabel Lewis of the United States Naval Observatory determined it was 7:31. It might, it might be 7:32 because there's a Belgian astronomer who he is a retired meteorologist who lives in Brussels, Belgium. He's now like 91, 92, and He is considered to be the seer. He's written a number of different books, like Mathematical Astronomy Morsels, I think. And he may have been the one that changed that from 31 to 32. So who's going to, you're right, who's going to quibble over one lousy second?
Well, we certainly aren't. It was within reason. So,
No.
you
Yes.
almost won the gift certificate from the famous big catalog company. Oh, good Lord. All right. Time to call it a night. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Always most appreciated. Thank you for the 37 likes on the show tonight. Also, most appreciated. Now, what time are we on tomorrow?
We're on at 8:30 tomorrow.
All right. So tomorrow we will go on at 8:30 Eastern Time, as you've got another one of those library things to do. And I guess an early heads up. I forgot to mention this to you at the beginning before we started, but Sunday, if we could move the show Sunday to a 7:00 p.m. start, does that work for you?
I'll have to check, Joe. That may not be possible, believe it or not.
I find that outrageous.
See. Let me hang on. What is that's June the 6th?
Yes.
I have 2 library talks, one at 2 p.m. and another at 7 p.m. on Sunday, believe it or not. So if you want to do anything on Sunday and you have to move around, maybe 8:30 would be the best time. I cannot unfortunately do 7 o'clock.
8:30 Sunday evening. That's perfect. That would be fine.
Okay.
I got the kiddies coming over on Sunday, so I always like to. I don't like to interrupt my time with my grandsons with the show. So
when your grandsons come over, I mean, he said JJ, and the dog looks and like, oh no,
not at, no. My youngest grandson, who's a year and a half, Nolan's. I call him Nolo. He says pop yay yay, and you'll hear him call out yay 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 yay
yay yay.
But he loves the dog, and the dog really is so. It's amazing to see how gentle my dog is, as active and rambunctious as he can be. I've got the gnaw. The gnaw marks on my arms and legs because he likes to play by. But with the kids, he's so delicate. He's so gentle with them, especially with Nolan. And Nolan, he likes Nolan a lot. JJ likes Nolan because he sits underneath Nolan's high chair, and Nolan will throw food at him. So he likes that. And meanwhile, my older grandson runs, who's 3. He runs around and says, JJ's going to eat me. JJ's going to eat me. And I'm like, no, he's not going to eat you. He's going to lick you, but he's not going to eat you. He does it. He says that and he laughs. It's really cute to see the kids interact with the dog. And I'm glad when I picked my dog, I had that was front and center. It's what kind of dog I got was going to have to be a dog that I knew that was going to be really good with kids. And then this Aussie Shepherd Border Collie mix that I have, both breeds are very, very good with little ones. So that made me happy.
That's great.
Okay, so Bill Rogers is already itching for me to do the Lionel trains up. I've got them stored all over the house. I am going to have to find some room here. I don't have a big cabin. I plan to eventually build a room to just for the trains, and have it as my sort of man cave. Actually, the whole house is a man cave, but I need a room for the kids to set up the trains and to play with them. But they will be up at Christmas time. I will find a way to get them going. I actually can run them. I have enough to run them all around the house, and I think that might be my plan. I may just run them all around the house.
Larry King, the late Larry King, I forget who he was, what house he was describing. It was some very well-to-do person or whatever, but he was also a big railroad buff. And Larry King says as you just mentioned, Joe, they were all over the house. And in fact, he said I was sitting on the toilet one day, and he actually has a place where the trains could come into the bathroom, and you're watching as they're passing by.
Well, somebody showed me a picture of a house on the Jersey Shore in Long Beach that the person specifically built so that so that he could run trains through every room, and the trains run up, above maybe 6 or 7 feet up. But they run through there, and there's like little holes cut in the wall, so they run through the wall into the next room. It's kind of cool to see that. But I have no intention of cutting holes. I'm not cutting holes in my wall to have trains running around.
But now, if you do build a room just for the trains, it's like these places where when the kids were much younger, we take them to these places where huge room, huge train sets, and the guys who are running the trains, they're all dressed up like the conductors from Petticoat Junction. With the hat and everything. So we ought to get a hat for you, Joe.
Oh, I have a conductor's hat here somewhere.
Oh, that's great. You got to wear one time after you get the trains up.
I have to find it. Okay. All right, everybody. So tomorrow night, 8:30 Eastern time. So be safe, and we will see you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
Night.